Hi guys, welcome to the video chat today, and today we're going to address the topic of EZDrummer. This plugin is really easy to use and it's great for making fast draft projects or pilot projects. And we already have one guest in the video chat, and let me just say that guests are unregistered members, so feel free to register for free if you want to participate in the chat, ask me some questions, because this is a live chat or a live stream. So let's continue on the EZDrummer, and I got Cubase, but in the end it's just the same. Let's import EZDrummer right now. Okay. And here's EZDrummer, and you can see the graphic interface. It has a display drum here, and it currently says pop rock sample library. And this is the basic EZDrummer. You can see here it's loading the samples. You can actually change some samples here of a particular drum kit, because usually when people start to use EZDrummer, they tend to use only the default samples, the default drum kit that you can load. And here it's loading now. I'll show you how the samples sound. Here's the kick drum, here's the snare, here's a rim shot, and hi-hat, left crash, right crash, hit a ride here, no bell, one tone, second tone, and floor tone. And what people usually don't do when they start using EZDrummer is choose different samples. So you can click on this little arrow here, and you can see that there are 5 different samples of a kick drum. For example, this is a felt beater sample. Here we have a plastic beater as well, which is a bit different. We also have like an open kick, like a loose kick of the drum, and here's another sample. They're a bit different, there are small nuances, but you can actually notice it in the mix. And the last one is the most tight kick drum. Okay, let's move on to the snare. People tend to usually use this snare, but when you're in studio, often you will have the snare drum dumped. So let's use the Rogers, but Rogers dumped, and let's see how that sounds. So dumping the snare will actually decrease its sustain, and it will sound like this. So more tighter. Immediately I have more tighter drums for my mix, just by altering these 2 samples. And let's move on to the mixer. And the mixer is here to the left. You can click on it and it will open, and you will see its internal mixer. First load a groove from the groove library so we can hear and in real time change these mixes. And here we have a button, open grooves. Let's just take pop rock samples, groove 1. It's a basic groove, so something like this, okay? And let's now open the mixer, and in the mixer you can change the presets to roomy, dry, more dry preset, or just flat mono. So this dry preset sounds something like something interesting, but let's change it to default. This is the default. And usually when people, I see a lot of people that just start to use EZDrummer and do not bother to open this mixer at all. But if you open it, the default setting is not that great. So it would be best if you could lower down the room, make it to -50, and now if you play it, you have a bit more natural drums with a little less reverb. So more room, less room. The next thing in line is the overhead, and usually when mixing the real drums, the overhead is very important, because if you have overhead channels right, then you will have a mix of a complete drum right. Let's hear how only the overhead sounds, okay? So this is only the overhead. And usually how the mix of the drums is being done, let's just turn down all the components: kick, snare, top, snare, bottom, hi-hat, tom, 1, 2 and 3, and just leave the overhead and room, okay? We'll put overhead to 0 dB and let's just play it like that, okay? This is an example of a drum picked up only by overhead microphones, okay? Usually what you would do is just play the overheads and then add certain component that you need just to fill up the sound, okay? Let's try to add a little bit of kick here. That's too much. Like this, okay? And if we add the snare, you can see it has an attack here on the top. So now we have a good sounding kicking snare. If we continue then with the snare bottom, this sound can be good for certain styles, but I usually keep it low or in the middle somewhere. Hi-hat. So we don't need that much hi-hat as well, because you can hear it in the overhead as well. And toms, for now, we don't hear them playing, but we can put them here at just about -7. Okay, a bit more tighter, more focused drum sound for now. And let's now close this mixer and go into Cubase, where we will put all these components on different channels. I'm going to activate all outputs here. What that helps you to do is to create individual mix for each of the components in the EZDrummer. Let's try it, and you can see the channels here as well. So what we will do with these 8 channels is then route all the components, individual components, to individual channels in the DAW. How to do that? Well, in the mixer of the EZDrummer, you can see the output. Track 1, track 2, track 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We have 9 tracks in this mixer. So what I'm going to do is route kick on this EZ1 track. This is the track 1. And I'm going to route the snare top and snare bottom to track 2. And let me just write here: kick, snare, D and B. Okay. Then hi-hat, third. Hi-hat. Toms are 4, 5, and 6. T2 and T3 or floor tom. 7 is overhead, OH, and 8 is room. Okay. So let's see what we have here. Now we have successfully routed these channels into the DAW, and when you play them now, you will see that we have the kick here, and now we can actually control the mixer. We kind of translated the mixer and the channels into our DAW, so we can work more precisely here. Why did we do this? Well, for a number of reasons. The most important one is this mixer. It's a very simple mixer. We have the faders, we have the panning option, solo and mute, but this mixer also has inserts, sends, equalizer, which is very important, which we will use to actually enhance the sound of this drum. Now, by pressing this little icon here, because these channels are connected to EZDrummer, you can see tooltip, maybe edit VST instrument. If you click it, you will get this window opened, and we can play some groove, for example open grooves, and let's just choose some groove from the groove library. So simple groove, and in this groove we only have hi-hat, snare and kick, right? So what to do now when we have these things routed? We can start, like I said, from the overheads, and this is a sound only from the overhead, and we can possibly insert some kind of compression here. So I'm using this plugin. It's PSP Vintage Warmer plugin. It's basically a limiting amplifier. It acts like a compressor. So you can kind of put mild compression here on these drums, lowering them down a bit, like this. And then you can start by adding the kick drum. Okay. And if you select only the kick, you can see how it's not so, it doesn't have a good attack. So let's try to EQ it a bit. Okay, here I'll lower down the low range, and then I'm going to increase somewhere around, you can see somewhere around 60 Hz. So if you amplify that, you can actually hear where the bass is. You sweep the range a bit. So here you can see there is a lot of sustain, and we will try to avoid that. We need this punch here, this bass. Like this, okay? Try to eliminate this little part here. Like this. And place small dot here, which will help our kick cut through the mix. So for a dot, it depends on the sample of the drums, but what you can do, you can sweep the range like this until you find it. something that fits in the mix. So you should be doing this, of course, alongside with other instruments, alongside with the overhead. Sounds cool. Okay. Let's focus now on the snare. Remove this boxiness of the sound. Let me show you that. It's this sound, like you're dumping in a box. So we don't need this. We need and what I'm doing here is I'm actually amplifying it a lot so you can hear it. And we should actually remove it. But just minus 3 dB, so we don't destroy the overall sound of snare. What we can do with this first dot is try to get the snare more mass, and let's see where that mass can be. So around here somewhere. Like this. And then what you can do is actually add some presence to the snare as well. So here. Like this. Like this. So without this, and just add a bit more presence to the sound. And we can add the top end as well a bit. It depends on the mix. But if you now turn off, you will hear how the sample sounds. And with the IQ, slightly different, okay? An effects track, and this is the track where you actually don't put inserts like this. Let's say this is a hi-hat and you put an insert reverb like this. So I don't want to do that. This is because when the sound goes through a plugin, it's even more deteriorated. So let's try to add an FX track and add reverb there. And what I'm going to do now is move on to Sense and send this signal. Send this signal to this channel, the blue channel. Okay? And let's see how that sounds if I click this little button, pre-fader. It means I can lower down this and listen only to the sound of a reverb. So now you can see only the sound of a reverb, only on the hi-hat. Of course, the real advantage of using an FX track is because you can later on add the snare as well on this track. So instead of having two reverb plugins here, you can actually send two different levels. You can see here send level. You can send less or more to this channel, and this channel will play all that you send it with a reverb. And let's see what we have here. These are just normal reverb controls. We have a little EQ here as well. Cutting down, this is the, actually these are high pass and low pass filters. And you can hear how when I'm increasing this, I'm actually increasing transients in hi-hat. So if you need some transients in the mix, you can use something like this in the EQ, but at the same time you can also EQ this channel and get some transients in that way. So for now, let's not complicate things and just do straight from this plugin. It's a stock plugin from Cubase, which means you can use it as soon as you install it. And this is reverb time. You can see that reverb is now a lot bigger as if we're in the bigger room. Diffusion can be set to 100. Like this. So this is the sound of a reverb that we will use, okay? And we can actually lower down this range here for the, like this. So you can see I'm cutting off everything starting from 100 Hz to, let's say, 2 kHz. And a gentle slope, because we don't need this bass in the reverb, especially in these lower ranges. Okay, now as we have our reverb, we can actually turn up the dry signal here, and it was somewhere here. And you can now hear kick, snare, and hi-hat. Right? So depending on what you do for the mix, you can put hi-hat to the right, to the left. You can see how the FX channel works. Let's first turn this off. FX channel usually stands on 0 here, and when we turn this up, we can actually send as much hi-hat as we need. So we don't need a lot. Just like this. So while we're at it, why not add some reverb here as well? And just send this, and if we add, you can hear the snare on this channel as well. So we don't want to add too much, just like this. Okay? And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to unmute this channel, which is the overhead, and gently add it to the mix until I hear the correct balance. Because what overhead does, it adds that feeling like you're playing the drum kit in a room. Okay. The A version is the one with the mix, which sounds like this. And the B version is the default version. Thanks for being in chat, and that's it for today, so bye.